Good evening and welcome to the West Canada Valley Board of Education meeting, December 14th, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Peter first. Janine second. All in favor? Motion to go into executive. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, sorry. Glenn.
All right, so Friday, the 11th, we had a SEP state visit, again, virtually. In that meeting, they made a few suggestions. Some of them were involving like just more contact with parents, working on that. One of the things that I did do prior to that, I started to do, is a parent survey to see how parents prefer to be contacted in different situations. Right now, we have 107 surveys back. Between 62 to 76% of parents want a phone call when it comes to academics, discipline, attendance issues that their kids are having in class. So that's what we have so far. We still have that open. I'm hoping to get most of the parents to complete that. We put it also in the newsletter as a reminder to do that if they haven't done so. Progress reports, they're going in this Friday, 18th, and it'll be available to parents on Tuesday of next week. Our next SEP visit is January 22nd. Being out, we're going to have to try to do a few things virtually that the state had recommended in the meantime. 7th and 8th grade ELA, math, and state test, practice test is going to be the 12th, 13th, and 14th. So we'll be doing that on the computer with whatever students are here at that time. And the last thing is I just wanted to mention that Craig and Kelly Fellhaber donated $500 to the class of 2026. So I just wanted to thank them as well. That's all I have.
Any questions for Glenn? All right, Mr. Doherty.
We finally got the state guidance released to us on Friday that we'd all been kind of waiting for, which was no good news for us. Basically what they said was that all high-risk sports are postponed further. They don't give us a date. They don't give us any idea when it may end. Basically, we have to get clearance from state officials before we can do anything with that. So what that means for us is that basketball and cheerleading, both high-risk sports, are postponed for now until we're told otherwise. Indoor track is also postponed for now. That's not a high-risk sport, but it's an indoor facility sport, and there are no indoor facilities currently letting anybody come in and use their spaces. So that's postponed for us. So right now, in terms of athletics, we're really down to bowling. We're set to go with that because it is a low to moderate risk sport. We'll start that when we come back. We have practice days and our match days are scheduled with the Forestry Lanes in Little Falls. Randy's been really, really good working with me so far on that. Schedules will come out for that in the next couple of weeks. So we talked about that. So as far as the basketball, we did have a scheduling meeting today. Normally you go through and you get your league games and then you do all your crossovers. But we don't know when we're going to be able to start with that. So what we did was we went through and we realigned. There were 4 divisions. We shrunk it down to 3 because some schools won't be playing even if we're allowed to play. So what we did today was we realigned those divisions. Ours didn't change much. We still have our Valley schools with the addition of Halipat is in there. And Poland would probably be in with ours as well. And what we did is it's going to be like, say, Tuesdays and Thursdays will be the block, right? And so if they all of a sudden say January 15th, you're good to go, we'll start the schedule right there. So we know the order of the teams that will play, but we can't assign dates to them because we don't know when those games are going to happen yet. So if and when we're given clearance to go, we'll be ready to go for that. Like I said, the bowling schedules are coming out. JV basketball uniforms, which you guys have brought up, those are all set and ready to go for us. Spring sports schedules are still on pause as far as them coming up, but there is still a chance for sectionals. in that regard. Even if we come back this winter, there will be no sectionals or state play for winter sports. Retractable batting cage, we're still waiting on. Some of the parts didn't come in, so that I told you before was gonna get installed the next day. That didn't happen because we didn't have motors come in. So as soon as those come in, potentially happening over winter break, so we don't interfere with PE class. And as far as the disc golf course, all 9 baskets are in, so feel free to go out there and throw them around. Bring gloves, it's cold. That's all I got.
How many kids signed up for bowling?
Bowling, I actually don't know what his number is. It's not any, I thought it was gonna be this big,
Not
huge
big
number, but it wasn't really any higher than it's ever been before. He typically has anywhere from 10 to 15 on boys and 10 to 15 on the girls team too.
Is Holland Patton left the tri-valley?
Holland Pet, yeah. Yeah, they're in the Center State Conference with us. Yeah, that was a while ago. I think that they left. Do you remember what year that was? That was,
I don't remember. They've been quite a while in
Yeah.
that. Bigger, they've been in our bigger B division
mhm.
and when we're in regular.
For all the time I've been, for at least 6 years, they've been over here. So I think it happened sometime after I graduated from high school and before I started teaching here. I would say like 2010, somewhere around there.
They haven't been in the league in the last few years.
So they're not in our division in the league. So,
But they
but
joined
they're,
the CSC.
yeah, they're in the Center State
Do
Conference.
they have a reason for joining the CSC?
I don't know why they left. Like I said, that was long before I was doing any of this stuff.
I'll ask the superintendent. I know him well.
But for quite some time, they've been in with us, but they're in the higher division, so we only see that as
It's
a
just-
line of crossover with them.
Much bigger school.
Any questions, Mr. Gordy?
Is the ski club on hold?
Ski club is,
I'll talk about that, but I can address that right now until, so basically ski club's not on hold other than until we get to January 11th when we return. So it's on hold till then. But if everything goes well and we get snow, and it opens, we would start that week, like with bowling.
I would assume they want to have some rules at Woods Valley
Yeah,
in
they got
regards to ski.
Yeah, very strict rules, nights you're assigned to and how many check-ins and all that. Yep.
I mean, in the past, they have been in large groups.
Yeah.
I would assume they can't do that.
No, they're limited by the state as well. So there's very specific school nights for them to use there. Not sure what night we're going to be getting. Might be different than it was last year, but yeah, there's all guidance they need to do.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Ray?
So this past month, we've been training with Gordon Schaefer. He's all set, he passed his DOT road test. So he'll be able to drive for us hopefully when we come back from the break. Still a few things left to do. He has to get his fingerprinting done and a DOT physical this week. So that's why I'm hoping for after the break. Be set. DOT was here in inspection on our buses on November 17th. No issues. They're slated to come back in January. Have a pretty good rapport with them, so everything's been going well there. That's about it for transportation this past month.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Holmes?
So for the academic piece, I completed the first set of walkthroughs with the literacy coach, and then her and I met and came up with a plan to start in January for professional development. In elementary, it's the holiday season. We've been focusing a lot on fundraisers. We do have 65 students on our giving tree this year. Our community has been wonderful in making donations, so we've done a lot with helping those families out over the last month.
Before we move on, I just want to thank the administration team. I know with everything we're facing with COVID and trying to navigate remote, open, all the Department of Health stuff, so just want to let you know, thank you very much for everything you're doing to continue to keep us safe and open.
Thank you.
All right, motion to go into executive session for appointment of personnel matters, including review and appointment of employees and contract negotiations. Janine first, John a second, all in favor? Personnel report. Need a motion to approve Stephanie Boyer, elementary teacher, parental child care leave, effective on or about February 14th, 2021. Shauna first, Janine second, all in favor? Resignation, motion to approve Paul Edwards, custodian, for the purpose of retirement, effective November 28th, 2020. Carson first, Jessica second, all in favor? With a thanks for 40, about 40 years to the 42 years to the district, so thank you for the service. Appointments, motion to approve Teresa Sinikowski, girls basketball volunteer assistants for the 2020-2021 school year. Shauna first, Peter second, all in favor? Substitute, motion to approve William Paddock, substitute teacher, non-certified, teacher assistant, aide monitor, K-12, per the district approved rate sheet, effective December 14th, 2020. Shauna first, Janine second, all in favor? Need a motion to approve the budget calendar and budget assumptions. Carson first, Jessica second, all in favor? Discussion items, DJ budget workshop.
Okay, so tonight's our first budget workshop. We start this, believe it or not, for the next budget season. We begin this in December. This will carry on through April, and then to vote in May. I want to lead us in this year to the budget season, sort of an introduction to this, sort of discussing what we know and what we don't know at this time, and then we'll get into some focus areas of transportation and so forth to start this whole process. There's a few documents in your packet. You have to skip ahead just a couple pages in. There's a couple of charts in there I've included in here. Just some things that are right there that I don't think are a surprise to everybody, but also I think they're important as we enter into the budget season so that everyone's sort of aware of this. I don't think it's any secret that everyone feels this pandemic is going to impact school districts, not only in the upcoming year, but in future years. And I think any school district that doesn't at least have a mindset of preparation for that in not only this budget season, but future budget seasons, kind of would be missing the boat there. The charts and the projections and whatnot are just projections right now. But when we look at these projections in terms of state revenues, it's no secret that the state revenues are going to be down. How that'll bounce back, hopefully sooner than later, is an open question. The impact the federal government will have on all of this in terms of relief for states and so forth to try to close that gap. But there's no doubt there will be some sort of impact financially on districts in terms of how this money will be made up, whether it's immediate or long term. There's things that will need to be done. So districts will be impacted by that. Those surges in projected deficits, and we've talked a little bit about this in our meetings as this has all gone on. The initial impacts may not be as heavy as they are in future years. This year may be less of an impact than 2-3 years down the road. I don't know if the true impact of the pandemic from an economic standpoint will truly be known right away. Certainly there'll be some Band-Aid fixes along the way, I'm sure, to try to keep people afloat, whether it's schools or other areas. But, these deficits and these revenue projections are not good right now. There's a lot of unknowns at the federal level right now. So I don't mean to paint a bleak picture, but I think, realistically, as we enter the budget season, we start to talk about different areas and things we're doing in terms of our budgets. We need to be aware of that as well. I think it's important to start with that. One of the other big things that's currently in our state government, a lot of action is going on with it, is in relation to transportation from last year. I think you've read that in some of your, NISBA information. I've included a number of different pieces in regards to transportation. We know that we are a heavy transportation aid district, 88%, which is really good for us in terms of our aid return on that. As we mentioned during the last school year, during March to June, specific guidance with money tied to that to keep things rolling from March to June, to keep people employed, to transport resources to students, to get food and transportation to the homes and deliveries available, and to keep that line of transportation open without sending people to furloughs or unemployment and so forth during March to June. Well, that's come into question a little bit because transportation aid is driven in non-COVID times with transportation of students. So when transportation aid was discussed from March to June for all districts across the state, there was no discussion of whether that aid would be drawn away and so forth for that period of time. So now there's a lot of government debate on that and a lot of fighting going on right now at the higher levels over that return from March to June in terms of the aid. Now, I'm not an alarmist. I think in the end, hopefully rational minds will come in and say, that was a pandemic. You required certain things of all districts, and therefore, our transportation, what we spent on transportation, would get aided. We obviously spent far less than we would have during that March to June, but the aid package and whether that comes is really, really important for a district like us who's heavily aided by that. And I don't want to put Kelly on the spot, but we would be looking at if there was no aid to that March to June approximately. Yeah, he's careful. No, let's scare people too much. Not 220 million, about $220,000. So that's what we expected aid for just this district from March to June last year. So as we move forward, that's something that we'll pay attention to, although that was last year and so forth. As we budget for future years, we need to pay attention to, that aid comes through for the districts and obviously districts and school boards and state officials that are representing us are fighting hard to make sure that aid from March to June is driven like it always was, and for us that'd be at an 88% rate. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on. I included some resources that we're not going to bore everybody to read, but that'll give you an idea of the fighting that's going on in that area of transportation. So those are just a couple of things that are early as we get into December. We never know very much this time of year anyway, but there are some things that are there for us to begin with. So if we go back to the beginning of the packet, you'll see in here we approved, we discussed these last month, and again, approving them this month, our assumptions and our calendars. And one of the items on our calendar for this month will be our transportation replacement plan. And I have Mr. Ray here tonight for any questions you have on this. I'll give for anybody watching out there and for board members here just a little background. This transportation replacement program that we've had at West Canada has been in place since 2003. And what this program allows for is a 5-year replacement plan for our buses, our large buses especially, with guaranteed buyouts at the end of those 5 years. So as we look at this program, this has been a really valuable program for us to keep an up-to-date fleet of buses, keep a fleet of buses that we can use in normal years where we're using a lot of transportation, and keep them safe for the students that are using them day in and day out. Obviously, living in a rural area, weather conditions and so forth take their toll on buses. Really important program and plan for us. I think Mr. Marco brought it up last month. It acts like almost like a lease program without mileage. It's a purchase, but it's also a return on that purchase and a guaranteed budget purchase for us. Just a little background again for everybody. Our large buses, we have 15 of them. We have 4 small buses, and we have 2 wheelchair small buses as well for wheelchair transportation. In normal years, these buses are not only used for our regular transportation, they're used for our field trips, our athletic transportation. Sometimes we have double up runs when buses leave early, where we're bringing kids home. But we also have athletic events going on, which allows us to run different buses and have enough buses for all the transportation that goes along with that. We have buses that we need to retain on campus on a daily basis, at least one for service. We have buses that we need to take off the road for DOT inspections. As Mr. Ray already mentioned tonight, we just completed one, and we'll have another one in January. We have 5 o'clock transportation, and again, looking at all this, this isn't going on right now, but these are all things that we offer with our buses. And the big part about all of this, as I mentioned already, is when we do these things, we right now have an aid rate of 88% on all of this, returning this. So if you flip to the next page, the financials are in for this upcoming budget referendum that would be placed there if we'd like to move forward with it again for next year. The cost of we have 3 buses as usual up for replacement. They're 5-year-old buses. The cost for the 3 new buses are $119,880 a piece, times 3, which equals $359,640.33 in purchases. We have a trade, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, a trade guarantee of $37,000 on each of our 3 trade-ins, which gives us a total of $111,000 in trade-in value guaranteed. So the total cost for this pre-aid, as I would mention, pre-88%, is $248,640.33. The 88% aid on that is $218,803.85, which leaves the district with a total cost of the 3 large buses of $29,836.84. So you're getting 3 brand new large buses, for just under $30,000. So when you look at that type of program and what we're getting for that, it's a really valuable program to a district like ours. The small buses are a little bit different. Some years we have wheelchair. Last year was wheelchair. We're back to a regular small that's up this year. The cost of those are expensive as well. $62,375.81 for this year's small bus. The trade, which Mr. Ray works and we negotiate as a district, this is not a guaranteed on the small buses. We're getting $12,000 back on the trade for that. A little bit more actually, Mr. Ray, than we've been getting, I think, on that. And the total cost pre-aid is $50,375.81. Your aid total is $44,330.71. So the total cost for that one small bus, it should be deleted there. This is not a wheelchair bus, correct?
No.
Yeah, so that cross out wheelchair, this is just a small bus, is $6,045.10. So in the end of this, the referendum, would be placed on the ballot as usual in May, but just for a total cost of what we're looking at here for this year's replacement plan after aid is $35,881.94. And as I mentioned, the referendum would be for the purchase of 3 large buses, a purchase of 1 small bus, and that's always done on a separate public referendum aside from the budget approval. So before I move on to anything further than that, questions on this plan for me. Also, I have Mr. Ray here, our transportation supervisor, that can answer any questions you have about that at this point in time.
Is this aid guaranteed? Is it safe?
Yes.
You're sure?
This is guaranteed, yes.
I mean, everybody thought March to June was okay
Understood.
too.
Understood, yeah. So if anything came around where something we've talked a lot about this in this district. This is valuable to us with our aid ratio. If anything were to ever happen to that, then we would have to look at this a lot differently, no doubt about it. But yeah, there's no indication that there's any change to aid for pupil transportation at all. Any other questions for myself and Mr. Ray on transportation? Okay. So with that, we'll move on. That'll become part of our reoccurring piece of our budget as we keep moving forward with our budget development. If you flip to the next page, the other item that's on our first workshop is our rate reference chart, which is the amount of money that we certainly put into the budget to pay for substitutes, teachers, and teacher assistants, music, extra work outside of the workday for music, sporting events, chaperones, bus driver trainings, instructional rates, Red Cross trainings, things like that. The draft that I have in front of you remains absolutely unchanged from last year. If there are changes, normally I highlight a recommendation or a proposed change to any of these rates highlighted in yellow. I do not have any proposed rate increases. This would be one area at this point in time that I think we stay status quo with at this point in time. So as we get closer to the budget approval, we would approve these rates for next year. Does anybody have any questions on the rate reference chart that is presented in the packet? With no changes from the previous year.
I think I've said this before. I find it interesting that we pay someone to play the piano less than an orchestra member, but they are part of the orchestra.
Yeah.
Is the company that's also, I'm asking, is it for the concerts, where the orchestra's for the musical only?
Yeah.
Practices and.
Yeah, so if you can clarify that. So the orchestra is more related to the musical piece. The accompanist is more related to like West Canadian type things.
Right, West Canadian chorus practice, chorus concerts,
Those kind of things.
but just not typically as long as the musicals. Or-
Any other questions on the rate sheet? So with that, if there's no further questions, that gets us through board workshop 1. Always a little bit shorter, as I mentioned, December, we don't know a lot, but you know, that gets us started with where we're going with this.
All right, COVID-19 update.
So the COVID-19 update, we've gotten a little bit of this in the last couple of days. There's been some changes even since I've sent the packets out. I want to talk just a little bit about where everything is. Some of this is pretty straightforward in terms of we can all see this for ourselves. I'd mentioned to some of you already, I think we're down to 4 districts in Herkimer County that are still open as we speak today in terms of remote, in terms of in-person instruction. The increases of community identification and community spread is at its highest level we've seen in this area since this whole thing started. So that's causing a system right now from the outside of this building of overwhelming public health. And that's not just when it comes to schools, that comes with anything that's out there right now. There are so many positives that are coming out on a daily basis, especially when we look at Herkimer and Oneida County, that the tracing that we started the year out with, where we were getting identifications of positives and then doing some precautionary quarantines with the Department of Health and Tracing, has become drastically delayed by results and tests. And, quite honestly, Herkimer County Public Health released a letter last week that said, tracing right now is not going like it was, if I'm saying it honestly. They're not getting to it, the tracing, they're not even making all the calls anymore. The system itself and the amount of workforce we have in Herkimer County is overwhelmed right now. I will say that schools are still a priority for that. So when we do have contact, I can't say enough about Christina Kane, who's the head of public health, and what she's doing to assist us in this process, which has allowed us to stay open, because even when tracing isn't working necessarily outside of schools, we're still able to get us some information with that. But with that said, the community spread here, I can, honestly say, didn't hear too much about it. Even last year, the March, June, didn't hear too much about it to start the year. Right now, I hear about it daily, positives in the area daily, different people. Some impact us in terms of kids having to leave the school to go out. Some is impacting us from a staffing standpoint. Fortunately for us right now, we haven't been hit recently with a positive in the building, which has led to tracing. There's been definitely some kids on quarantine, some staff. Some of the districts that have closed have pulled staff to different areas out. So the overall impact is there, but we've been fortunate as of right now, as of Monday. It's really day to day. in terms of receiving a positive. It's been, quite a few days since we actually had a positive in the building, a confirmed positive where we were forced to trace and precautionary quarantine, where we did have a couple, earlier in the year. So certainly on a daily basis, we're on the phone with the Department of Health. We're evaluating absentees. We're calling every house if your child is out of the building that day to find out why. We're referring people. We have people that are out for testing right now. As soon as tomorrow morning, you could get a call where you have 1 or 2 positives, and that changes what I'm saying tonight. And, I think everybody kind of sees the system. When we do get a positive, the immediate thing is they want all the names of anybody who's been in contact with the positive for 15 minutes or more. It starts usually in our classrooms, and then it spills over to whether the student rode the bus or not. And that's really how it works, and we fax over that information, and they take that over. The catch with it right now is, a little bit more on the schools to notify in these cases. And with the straining in staff and the substitutes and so forth, you're seeing some schools kind of run out of people is what's going on. And with the upcoming holiday season, the fear is, and this is through direct, discussion with the public health, it doesn't look good right now. So these upcoming weeks and into January and February, I think are going to be really, really challenging. As I announced on Friday, after a lot of discussion with regional superintendents, public health, I can't tell you how many different people, state level people and so forth. I'm not one to try to outguess the virus by any means, but there are some things we can think about. And I think, those two days leading up were an opportunity to give us a couple full weeks to lead up. And then that week after of being remote gives us a little bit of post damage control, for lack of a better word, after the New Year's and the holiday break itself, and to see where we are and get us back in here on the 11th. My biggest worry as we got going was we come back on the 4th, and I'm sending everybody right back out unplanned. At least now we can give some sort of planning to where we are in hopes that everything will get back to normal on the 11th and we're good to go. Obviously, I have no way of knowing that at this point in time. But I know the impact that it has on families, working families, was different in March and June a little bit to me because some of these families were home because they were forced to be home. They're not necessarily home, everybody, right now. So, when the students aren't here, besides for the educational value of being here, I know that impact that it's had on them. I've seen the impact on families that have been put into quarantine. And those are tough because they're unexpected and in short notice, they've got to figure that out. So I think this was an opportunity. Again, I'm sure there are people that may not agree with it or and whatnot, but I'm trying to keep us here. If giving up a few days in the beginning maybe can get us here more through the winter months, but that'll be to be seen. The other thing I included in your packet is the cluster zones. If anybody got a chance to look at the news today, the yellow zone cluster has officially hit the area. Not necessarily our area just yet in terms of our district, but it's into Utica, Oneida County, and into part of Herkimer County too. So the zone got released this afternoon, the new zones, which is the lowest level zone, but it means that we're on alert, right? And I think I mentioned that last month. Our percentages that we have on a 7-day average are right there. And if it continues to go forward, you could see yourselves in yellow, orange, red, the different zones. The paper that I gave you is the most recent update on December 4th. Yellow, orange, and red don't necessarily mean the school has to close now where it did before. But what it does mean is testing 20% of your staff and students over a 4-week period. There's some specific regulations in there. If we have 9, if you're in one of those orange or red zones, if you have 9 people or 9 or more positive cases during that time, it causes you to shut down immediately. If though, on the other hand, your percentage after testing 20% is lower than the community spread average, you don't have to test anymore. You can remain open. The testing is the biggest thing. Did some training statewide with this. Some of the larger counties have a lot of resources when it comes to public health in their counties and medical facility resources. That's not the case in Herkimer County. Testing will be really, really challenging if all the districts here are looking for that. Currently, right now, Herkimer BOCES has the application in for the lab license. You need to get a lab license, and then you need to set up your testing stations at your school and then begin to test students and staff. There are permission slips that would go out. You cannot force anybody to test if we get into one of those zones, but we will be looking for 20% to volunteer their way into this, and it has to be spread out throughout the building. So if we do get into any of these things, these are the things that will occur. It is what I'm told is the less invasive circle swab test. You get it back fairly quick. It's a diagnostic test that comes back. We would know pretty quick who's positive, who's negative. And if you don't get 20% of volunteers, then your school has to close. So it's one of those things where I know people will be reluctant, and there will be people that won't want that to happen. But in the end, at some point, if we get into a zone, we would have to find 20% of the staff, overall staff, and 20% of all students to do so in order to have a chance to remain open if we were in a cluster zone. So those are some of the most recent updates to COVID-19 and where we're at. So again, we're hoping to get through this week of in-person, have a nice holiday, have some remote instruction on Monday and Tuesday on our regular schedule, just in a remote fashion like we've already done, I think, fairly successfully already this year. And then, have that week of remote get us back in this building, hopefully on January 11th. So with that, I know that was a lot. I talked a lot. Is there questions on any of this and where we're at this point in time, or any questions about COVID or school, how the school relates to that, or anything I didn't cover for you that you'd like me to answer for you to the best of my ability?
Is the school open to faculty during those remote days, or the teachers reporting?
Yeah, so depending on the situation, for the first 2 days, the Monday and Tuesday, and this is what I did after Thanksgiving, is created the option. A lot of teachers like to be in here, and if we're not closed, they can be in here if they don't have the resources at home. I probably, for the first 2 days, will give that option of being in here or out to try to limit the number of people in here those 2 days and the potential for any quarantines. As we get into the following week, that's still a discussion item on how we want to do that. One of the things I'm concerned about here is having everybody in this building streaming at the same time, which is not something we've been doing. So at no point in time, we've streamed some and so forth, but if we have everybody running all the high school classes and streaming at one time, and we're doing that, that hasn't been tested yet. So it's something I want to find out about in case we were in a long-term closure. But I also don't want to lose a day if we're on Google streaming overload in the building. So there's just some factors into that we're thinking about. So
the 21st and 22nd is going to be remote?
21st and 22nd.
Teachers are coming in?
Would be remote. What I would do on those 2 days is they'll have the option to teach from home or here on those 2 days.
Do you have records of what they do at home?
Yeah, because they run the regular schedule. Yeah, we have access to all
I
their
understand
classes.
that. Do you ever call them in?
Yes, we
Have
have,
they ever called in to look at?
we have access to all of their classes. So we can get on to any one of their classes at any point in time during those periods to do that. So yes, because it's over the digital. Yep. I
I
understand.
know some schools are having a little issue with that.
Understand your question. Yep, for sure. If things are structured correctly and people are following a structured schedule, there shouldn't be any difference to that situation than if you have a period 3 class or a period 4 class, period. You know what I mean? And the time slots run the same and the schedule runs the same. I could see in certain areas or certain situations where a district might not have that defined out, or they would run into issues with that. So we did it pretty successfully on the first 2 days after Thanksgiving when we had to close.
Is there any requirement when that's done that they have to turn in their log or whatever? Is there a requirement for that?
Yeah, it's in terms of the work log. So all the work and all the login information is taken right into that digital. So it logs into our whole system of Google Classroom. So we know who's logged in the systems. We identify which computers are on and who's doing everything. Not me personally, but I have technology people that are able to do that.
They can log into everybody.
Yes,
All at the same
because
time.
they're all running under the school system.
All at the same time.
We're all running, yes. So we have the school system and who's logged into their Chromebooks and who's teaching is all
You can run reports.
all
on
system
that.
reports. Yep. Other questions?
I just wanted to add that the 2 days that you closed after Thanksgiving, having a second grader, we do have materials at home that she could have logged on,
Mhm.
but the school brought her iPad from the class. I think that's great, because you don't know who has what, because it was unexpected.
Yeah.
So I think that was nice that you did that.
So thank you. What we really tried to do, and I caught, is tried to get as much of that out prior to the Thanksgiving break as we could. Even though I didn't know we were going to do that, I was just worried because of the way things were going. So then we identified who wasn't here to get that message, and then kind of reached out from
You know,
there.
the teacher reported out, if you need something, there might be someone
Yep.
at the school. I didn't go because we had staff,
Yep.
but they still sent it at
Yep. So we, our principals, Mr. Broadbent, Mrs. Holmes got that ready right away for us, and Mr. Ray was ready to roll first thing in the morning so we could get that out before we got going with the Google Meets that day. So thank you for saying that.
Again, just thank you all. This isn't anything you planned on having to do, is to navigate COVID within our educational system, so really appreciate it. And my understanding too is at times when we've been having staff quarantine or you're light in the building, that some of you have been doing some gym classes and helping out your teachers.
Yeah, so we've had some situations where we've had to get creative in covering things, and some of them are sitting out there covering different things. So I'm not sure whether I got principals or teachers out there sometimes, but people have been great. Teacher assistants, stuff we would never do normally. And, when we have these quarantines, it creates this puzzle of covering lunches, and we don't have kids in cafeteria. There's just a number of things, I won't get into every detail of it, but, the puzzles are a lot. Mrs. Holmes has been the chosen one so far, so she's had a lot of puzzles to do. But I'm sure Mr. Broadbent's not going to be far behind with that as well. So we've been fortunate in a lot of ways, for sure. I think some of the things we're doing here is created some fortune for us too. I think we've limited, because we've been pretty strict on things in here to the best of our ability, and I think that's helped to limit things from spreading and identifying. It's tough now, though. I'll be honest with you, it's tough. There's a lot going on right now, not as much as it was earlier, or more than there was earlier, I should say.
You still have a handful of people having problems with the internet, all that stuff.
Yeah, so in terms of our internet, there's a couple of areas. So we have a lot of technology resources, including hotspots and multiple service providers like AT&T, Verizon. We've even gotten some hotspots because I know up, when we get up to Dairy Hill, that area, sometimes AT&T is a little bit better. But we definitely have a handful of kids that are just in spots where these hotspots, their devices and things aren't super effective for streaming. They're okay to work on the computers, get on the internet, do some of their work on there and so forth, but they can become intermittent and cut out on them during a live teaching event that are on those. And those are just, we're way better than I ever thought we could be with that in this kind of rural area, but, to say we don't have a few that we struggle with day in, day out, yeah. And it's a big factor in me trying to keep us here, just even a handful of people, because I know, you hear that across the state, the equality, I know there's a lack of equality when that happens at times. It's just things we can't, until fiber and things get to those places.
A lot of it's just geographic.
Yeah.
In the hill between the tower, you're not going to get service.
Yeah. So we've done, we try to offer different things to them, different places. If they can move, some can move to areas where they have better service. So we've been fortunate to correct some of them that way. But there's some that are just kind of isolated in there, and there's just, we do the best we can. We bring stuff to them. We've recorded lessons to give to them so they can see them. We've just done a few different creative things to try to reach, and it's, if I'm wrong with that, probably a handful, Mrs. Holmes, Mr. Broadbent, right, of kids that are just consistently,
Some are getting paper copies from their teachers, taking it home and then bringing it back.
And I do feel bad for them, because I wish that, I could do something that's a little bit higher level, situation. So that's why it's important for us to be here as much as we can, that's for sure.
All right.
Any other COVID questions for me?
Winter athletics.
So Mr. Doherty alluded to a lot of this. Information kind of came out on Friday. So winter athletics, I think we all knew that indoor athletics in general were going to be a big question leading up into this time of year. Also the designation of high-risk sports versus moderate and low-risk. are big variables in all of this. I know there's some fighting going on at the state level to identify sports that may not be high or what aren't thought to be high risk, and why are they categorized as that. I haven't seen any information that would, indicate that there would be any changes to a sport being moved per se from high risk to low to moderate risk. I don't see the state changing those categorical identifications for them. So with that being said, high-risk sports are off the table right now until further notice. There's been no information at the state level at this stage of the game in terms of any release of the high-risk sports. We certainly have discussed in depth tonight what's going on in the community. So, the tough part for me to say is, I don't see an end in sight to that right now, to the high-risk sports. For us, that means basketball and football. So we'll see where that goes, and if it's, we've talked about this pretty candidly here. What's available to us, we'll do. When it becomes available, we'll do it. We'll put our safety measures in place and activate it. So for right now, January 11th will be our start date for bowling. January 11th will also be our start date for ski club. I know it's not a direct competitive athletics, but it's a permitted outdoor activity. We'll start that that week as well, pending their snow. And we'll carry out as long as they permit us to have bowling. That's the sport we'll be able to offer at this point. Indoor track has been canceled. There's no colleges or anywhere that's going to allow that to happen all year. So regardless of what's permitted at the state level, that's going to have no impact on this area at all. Unless all of a sudden colleges start saying we'll let people on campus and they're not even playing their own sports. So I don't see that happening. Where the schedule will go, I've had questions. Could winter sports be pushed to later months? Could there be certain things canceled? I don't know the answers to those, but I think, I wouldn't rule out a potential for opportunities if high-risk sports are permitted at all this year to some changes in the scheduling. So I'll keep you up to date on all of that, but that's unfortunately where we're at right now with that.
Okay, board vacancy.
Handle that at all?
Are there any questions? There was a letter from Sandy Sherwood in our packet, basically recommending from her, at this point in time, she will not appoint anybody or any decisions due to COVID, the cost, and she looked at our previous results and that recommended that we'll stay as we have been, and if we run into any issues or having issues in voting, then we would contact her back. So any questions on the letter? All right, policy 6212, certification and qualification.
Yeah, so for this policy, the cover policy from 2018 is the policy that's currently in play. You'll notice the update to that 2020 is essentially a logistical or an editorial update to it. We get these from time to time where they change verbiage and they cross things out and so forth throughout this. So this policy remains essentially unchanged. Just some editorial changes to this current policy and some changes that were put into educational law and so forth that are on the cross out. So this is all regulation when it comes to certification and qualifications for instruction that are dictated by the Board of Regents and obviously the New York State Education Department, the TEACH system, and so forth. In addition to identifying parent notifications and so forth with that. So I guess if there's any questions on that, I'll answer those for you. Again, it's a policy that's not really things that we change too much.
Any questions? All right, a motion to waive the second reading of policy 6212. Janine first, Jessica second, all in favor? Motion to approve policy 6212. Jessica first, Janine second, all in favor? Thank you. All right, policy 7221, early graduation.
Yeah, so I apologize for the confusion with this one a little bit. If you look at what has been given to you on the second page of this, policy 7221 This policy is participation in graduation ceremonies and activities. This is a new standalone policy and not a change to 7221. What happened here with this is in our policy manuals back in 2016, 7221 was combined with policy 7220, which is, so the information you see here on the 2005 version of early graduation is in our policy 7220. Okay, so that should have been, it didn't hurt anything, but it should have been deleted from the policy manual because it got absorbed. So 7221 became vacant. This current policy is the new 7221 recommendation. And the premise behind 7221 and the reason that it's important to have in your policy manual is the changes to graduation and the credentials. If you bear with me just for a second, I just want to read this. The district permits any student to participate in the graduation ceremony and all related graduation activities of his or her high school graduating class if the student has been awarded a skills and achievement commencement credential or a career development and occupational studies CDOS commencement credential, but is not otherwise qualified to receive a regents or local diploma. So this is something that's been in place regulation-wise for at least a few years now, Mr. Doherty, correct? Yeah, and this is for students who receive credentials from a technical standpoint or credentials from a skills development standpoint, but are not in current Regents level programs. We've had multiple students that have fallen into this throughout the years, as all schools have, and they are identified with walking, which they have always walked across our graduation with that. So this is a policy that needs to be put in there just as part of the regulation and a requirement for all districts to identify those students that are non-Regents graduating students to graduate with their class. So that's the purpose of this policy. And again, these are things that are required for us to have.
Questions? All right, motion to waive second reading of policy 7221. Donna first. Jessica second, all in favor? Motion to approve policy 7221. Carson first, Donna second, all in favor? Thank you. All right, announcements. December 23rd through January 1st, 2021 is the winter recess. Our next scheduled board meeting is January 11th, 2021. All right, public comments? Do you have any? No public comments? Okay, anything before we adjourn?
How's our cafeteria lady doing?
So yeah, just to update, our cafeteria replacement has been in place with us since the Monday after Thanksgiving. She's working alongside Mrs. Van Arnhem and is doing very well, very happy to be here, getting acclimated to all the paperwork and regulations. She's getting a full training with this remote to in-person. I started getting emails today, which is Monday, directly from her and not from Mrs. Van Arnhem, so I can see that transition's happening. And I'll be sitting down with her this week and we'll start to, well, I sat down with her today to develop a little bit of a plan in the short term for this, and we'll start to look at this long term as well. So things are going well with that. Mrs. Van Arnhem will retire at the end of December.
I wish you all a nice winter recess and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and motion to adjourn. Any first? Shauna second, all in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. I'm like, I can't see.